Okay, so before we get into the guidelines, I just want to give you a little bit of context. Why are we talking about this right now? So 2020 social media came with a lot of social changes. There were some acts of violence that originated on social media. There was some accelerated spread of misinformation, which made stemming the spread of COVID-19 difficult. There was some activism. There was the rise of cancel culture. I know that these headlines are very American centric, so just bear with me. But the point of all of these headlines is just for you to understand that social media trends are having real world consequences. I mean, I guess this has always been the case, but this has really come to fruition in 2020. So I don't want to scare you with these headlines. It's quite the opposite. I really want to encourage you to post, but to post responsibly. So in this conversation, I'm going to answer any questions that you may have, maybe about cancel culture or this growing sort of trend in social media. But again, it's an important conversation. We're all members of the social media community, and we want to ask ourselves, how are we impacting that environment? And how are we impacting maybe even society on a larger level? As a social media manager, I think I feel I have a certain responsibility to tell you about these trends, to protect you, to protect your behavior on social media, to protect ICC's brand on social media. And as an ICC pioneer, I really believe that you also have a role in this. You are a champion for ICC on social media, and you can be a champion for sharing responsibly too. And also, just a little bit of context, social media platforms, there's not really regulation on social media right now. So what we're seeing today are brands really leading the way on self-regulation in this issue. They're revisiting their staff guidelines so that they're aligning more with the social values of the day or their corporate social values. I don't know if anyone from policy is listening right now, but it's kind of like business needs social media guidelines. And internally, just connecting it straight with our mission, ICC-WBO is doing this as well. We want to be pioneers internally to make sure that we are up with the trends of what's happening on social media. And to connect with our values, of course. We want to make sure that you, our staff, not just pioneers, but our staff in general, feel connected, that they feel liberated, that they feel like they can share on social media, that they're being generous, and that they're being and they're living our caring culture on their feeds. So before we get into our staff guidelines, does anyone have any questions before I move on? I hope that's kind of clear. Yes.
Super clear, thank you.
Okay, great. So before we move on, let's talk a little bit about, having problems switching. Okay, next. Let's talk a little bit about what you can post on social media. Now, the platforms. So all of the platforms have what they call community standards. Now, each platform has a varying degree or different community standards, but generally speaking, they all have some sort of community standard which dictates what you can and you can't post on their platform. You agree to these community standards when you sign up and when you log into LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. every day as a content creator and as a user. Does anyone have any ideas as to maybe what are some things you cannot post? You could go ahead and write it in the comments. You could just take a guess. What is something that you absolutely cannot post on social media according to the platform's community standards? I mean, can you post just anything? Can you post, is it open season on social media right now? Go ahead and write in the chat if you might have an idea. What are some things that say that you can't? Okay, Dawn says nudity. Belinda, nudity, hate speech. Francois, yes, those are all things that fall into this community standards, which bar and which could get you banned on these platforms should you post them. Controversial issues, racism, incorrect political facts, graphic violence. All correct. These are all, you guys are spot on. Let's go into these a little bit more in detail. Again, each platform has different rules worded slightly differently, but generally speaking, they fall into these 5 categories. Everything you guys said, totally right. They fall into these categories as well. So number 1 is threats or calls to violence. This is your organized activity, organized crime, any sort of criminal activity, organized hate, anything that is illegal falls into this first category. The next would be risks of harm to someone or to public safety. So this is everything that would fall into online harassment, bullying. It could be also sharing private information to personally harm someone. All of this could get you banned from the platform and is against their community standards. Number 3 is objectionable content. This is a really gray area because the platforms don't actually tell you what objectionable content is, but you guys really hit it on the head when you said nudity, hate speech, defamation probably falls into another category, but nudity, hate speech, that all falls into this objectionable content category. It gets a little bit confusing because, okay, you can't post nudity, but what about works of art? What about women breastfeeding, which have been banned on certain platforms? So there has been some of these little controversies, what is considered objectionable content, but for all intents and purposes, no nudity on social media. Number 4 is fake news. So you've probably heard about this. It's been in the news a lot recently about how the social media platforms are policing fake news content that's being spread on their platforms. These community standards change. Facebook has revisited their community standards recently over the past couple of years. So it really varies between platform how strict they are with reinforcing fake news spreading. But the point is that you should know that all of the platforms have some kind of policy against this. They're staffing up. They have departments that detect and ways to detect fake news spread. So just stay away from it. We are going to go into this a little bit more when we go into the ICC staff guidelines, but know that the platforms are also keeping an eye on this. So don't think that just sharing misinformation is passable on these platforms. Again, it's an evolving thing, but stay away from it. Number 5 is anything that violates trademarks, copyright, IP. Look, I'm not a lawyer about this, but basically the social media platforms can ban you if you post anything that violates intellectual property, copyright law, trademark law. So if it's not yours, don't post it. That's the rule of thumb. If it's not yours, don't post it. If it's somebody else's, ask for their permission. You have to respect intellectual property rights on social media. And again, we're going to talk more about this when I go into the staff guidelines, because that's a very much part of what we're asking staff to do too. So those are the 5 things that can get you banned on social media. Does anybody have, before I move on, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone, anything about those issues? I'll give you a minute. That's just going straight to the question, can I post this on social media? The straight answer is no. After, we're going to go into a little bit of what the ICC staff guidelines are asking you to consider to not post. But these are very straightforward do and do nots. And as for getting banned on the social media platforms, sometimes you will get a warning, sometimes you will get 3 warnings. It depends on the platform. But even though you do get these warnings, it's a good thing to stay away from it, because we don't really know. You could post, one objectionable content and maybe it hurts your reach for the next week. There's a thing called shadow banning, which is getting more and more, I guess, play on Instagram, people posting things that are getting them shadow banned, meaning you might be banned and you might not even know that you're banned. And this is a direct result of breaking community standards. Any questions? Okay, cool. I thought there'd be a lot there. So beyond the community standards, let's look a little bit at, hold on, let me move on. Beyond the community standards, what the platforms dictate what you can and can't post, let's ask ourselves, what should I post on social media? Now, this is a little bit of more of a gray area than what we were just talking about, but ICC has created staff guidelines to help you navigate this question. Should I post this on social media? So we have core values, which we request our staff to follow when engaging on social and when you run into this question. I'm going to post the staff guidelines in the chat as soon as this meeting's over. It was also in the invite of this meeting itself, and I've also posted it in the all ICC groups. I've pretty much distributed it everywhere. But if you can't get your hands on it, you could always message me after. But anyway, the point is we're going to go through it now. And if you have questions about those guidelines, then we can address them as well. Hold on just one sec. Okay, so our core values for staff when engaging on social media. Again, we're going to go through these one by one, and if you have questions, here to answer them. Number one core value, be respectful, have fun, and connect. We want you as ICC staff, as an ICC pioneer, to share what you're doing at ICC on social media. We want you to connect with your staff members, with your fellow pioneers. We want you to develop your personal brand. That is what employee advocacy is all about. But we also want you to realize that what you do on social media reflects ICC to a certain extent. You know, understand that people might form an opinion about ICC based on how its staff behaves on social media. So we request that staff avoid content that could be seen as offensive, demeaning, inappropriate, abusive, violent, of course, that goes into the other categories. We're not in the business of, restricting your freedom of speech, but we are asking you to be respectful. Number two, be transparent about who you are and clarify that your opinions are your own. So we are requesting that staff be authentic on social media, and that means disclosing that you work at ICC. Not only is it when you're talking about ICC, so disclose that you work at ICC when talking about ICC. Not only is it the right thing to do, but in fact, in certain countries, you might be personally liable if you don't in certain situations. So the best practice, the rule of thumb, is just to be honest about who you are without revealing personal information. You never want to reveal personal information on social media. Okay, and the next part is to clarify that your opinions are your own. We're requesting that staff post this on all of their personal social media platforms in their profile, that opinions equal their own. And the reason why we're doing this is to protect you and your brand. Should you and our brand, should you post something that is in convergence with one of our policies? If you have questions about that, you could go ahead and put it in the chat, but we'll go into it a little bit more later if you don't understand. You've probably seen this a lot on Twitter, opinions equal my own. It's because most brands are asking their staff to do that these days just to avoid issues down the line. I'm going to give you a very clear, made up example of why this might be important. Let's say you post on Twitter, I hate Amazon. Amazon is terrible. And it just so happens that Amazon is an ICC member. So we're asking you to write opinions equal my own to make sure that you are differentiating your thoughts with ICC's own opinions on certain things. Number three, be aware that what you say is permanent. So it's no secret, the internet remembers there is no such thing as privacy on social media. It doesn't matter how secure or how strict you've set your privacy settings on your profile. There is no such thing as privacy. People can screen grab and share on any platform everything that you post. So the best the best practice is to post content, feel liberated, have fun on social media, but make sure that you are sharing stuff that you wouldn't feel uncomfortable if it showed up in your boss's inbox. That's the best practice, because assume that could happen. Number 4, be responsible in sharing only public and accurate information. All right, offline conversations stay offline. That's pretty clear. You don't want a private, one-on-one that you have with somebody showing up on Twitter or on LinkedIn later. You really should just keep what you're posting online to official public record information. And never post personal information about someone without their permission. And that goes for yourself. You don't want to post personal information about yourself that you don't want to be public knowledge. So just understand, some people are extremely private. They want their life to be private. Don't go on sharing their information without asking them first. And when it comes to accurate information, just so you are aware, in case you weren't, ICC is supporting the UN campaign to verify. It's called the UN Pause campaign, which was created to stem the spread of misinformation. ICC supports this verify campaign by asking our staff to think before they post, to pause and think and consider your sources before you share something on social media, to try to stem the spread of misinformation. And number 5 is to follow the law and to follow the platform terms and conditions. Exactly what we said before. Basically, just don't violate trademark, copyright rules, or IP laws. If it doesn't belong to you, don't share it. If you want to share something that doesn't belong to you, ask for the permission, add links, add credit wherever possible. And that's pretty much it. Again, I'm going to share the guidelines with everyone in the chat over here after our meeting. But for the time being, I really just want to get questions from people because I went through that rather quickly, and I just want to make sure that what I'm telling you guys is resonating and I'm not missing any details. So go ahead. Now is the time to ask your questions. There's a couple in the chat I'll address first, but then feel free to raise your hand and then we'll get to you with an answer. Okay, can you please further elaborate? This is from Leah. Please further elaborate the point about saying we are working at ICC in each post related to ICC or in our profiles only. If you are talking about ICC on social media, we are asking you to disclose that you are an ICC employee so that you avoid any kind of personal liability that may come of it. What this means is just, if you are talking about ICC on LinkedIn, make sure it says somewhere on LinkedIn on your profile that you work at ICC. Where this comes from, where this sort of disclosure comes from, and this is true pretty much for any brand is going to tell their staff the same thing, is in certain countries, the United States mainly, they have these sort of deceptive advertising laws. So for example, if you say by Incoterms and you don't disclose that you work at ICC and you have a relationship, an employment relationship with ICC, that could, in certain situations, be considered false advertising. So we just ask that you disclose in your profile when you're talking about ICC. If you don't talk about ICC at all on Instagram, you don't have to do it. But when you're talking about ICC, know that somewhere in your profile, you need to disclose your relationship with ICC. You might see this on Instagram when you see a post from an influencer and it says #ad. They're not doing that to be cute. They're doing that because they're avoiding liability and they're disclosing the fact that they have a financial relationship with that brand. So voila. And again, we're asking our staff to also post on their profiles opinions equal my own, which is a little bit different than disclosing that you work at ICC, but just just differentiating your beliefs and your thoughts with ICC's beliefs and official stances on things. How should I disclose that I'm working at ICC? Could you please elaborate? Same thing, just in your profile. If you've already said in your profile, I work at ICC, I am ICC's social media manager, you have it in your biography at some point, that's enough. We're not going to tell you exactly how to say it, but it's enough if you just write it in your profile or have it anywhere in your profile. I think most of the staff mentioned that we are working on ICC on LinkedIn, but don't necessarily want to say anything on Instagram or Facebook, even if we share a post from time to time. If you are not talking about ICC on those platforms at all, if you are not sharing any kind of information that has to do or is related to ICC's products, then don't worry about disclosing that you work at ICC. Again, where you want to disclose that you're working at ICC is when you're pitching or promoting ICC products, just so that it's clear that you have a financial interest in one way or another. So don't worry about doing it on every single profile. Just try to do it on the profiles where you're, let's say, addressing an ICC issue. But if when it comes to the opinions equal my own, we are asking staff to do that on every profile, every personal profile, to protect you and our brand. So voila. Belinda, you had a question?
Yeah. Hi, Stephanie. Oh, I've got echo a little bit. I don't know why, but it's annoying me, but not to worry. So it's kind of similar to Leia's question. And just to be clear, so obviously on LinkedIn, I have ICC on my profile because, well, that's what it's about. And then on Twitter, like sometimes I don't usually tweet about ICC, but sometimes I retweet like ICC ARB or ICC mediation for our events. So on there, I should say something about like in my, I can put it in my bio or something about working at ICC.
You should. Yes, you should. And you should have opinions equal my own as well, because if you're doing a mix of personal content and professional content, you want to make sure that people aren't considering you like an official spokesperson for ICC. So yes, you should write in your profile, just your job title, or you could even just put like ICC staff. You could put ICC pioneer. You could put anything that just alludes to the fact that you are connected with our organization.
Okay, that makes sense. And the same on Instagram, I guess you can just put it in your bio as well.
Same thing. You could just put it in your bio. It's yes, same thing. Same thing applies.
Yeah. And then if you, with the opinions on my own, that should be on every social media account that you have. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It should be on every social media platform that your opinions equal your own, because there's been some situations that we are seeing more and more of people posting their political beliefs, people posting things that could be considered controversial, and it's getting back to them. And in certain situations, in some situations, it's ruining their careers. So I'm not saying that this is I don't want to scare you. I'm just saying that it's a good practice to have opinions equal my own, because it protects you and it separates you a little bit from ICC. That is all. That's all.
Yeah, makes sense. It's good to know.
Yeah. We're not going to be trolling every single person's profile. It's on you. We're just requesting that you do it. Is there any other questions? If not, maybe Mila, if there was anything that you wanted to throw in from an HR point of view that I could have, perhaps have overlooked.
Well, thank you. I believe it's quite detailed what you just said, and thank you for that. We can say as employees, we may want to share on any platform what we are very at ease to send to our managers to look at. And you said that, Stephanie, actually, to me one day. And I think it's really something great to think, okay, I can share it with anybody. So that's probably the best way of doing things. But we trust our people, we trust our employees, and I don't think media platforms are somehow, a way to go against one's employer. It's the case. We had, cases in many countries, but we haven't had that for ICC. To my knowledge, actually, we never faced that. So I believe we have very great people, and so be it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Mila. For sure, our staff has been really already just beacons of responsibility on social media. It goes without saying that you guys have done such an incredible job over the past couple of months, increasing your social media participation, spreading the word about ICC's activities on your personal feeds. It's been really, really great. We just want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable given the rise of these sort of headline news stories about what's happening on social media these days. There's a question in the chat, where do I put opinions equal my own in LinkedIn, for instance? You could put it in the description right underneath your name. There's like it's usually, I think it's called your story. And you could just throw it in there at the very bottom. It's fine. It doesn't need to be the first thing you read. It just needs to be somewhere on your profile. Belinda, did you have another question? I'm conscious of time, so if anyone has last minute questions, throw them in the chat.
I'll lower my hand. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Okay, well, I think that's about it. I'm gonna throw to our challenge for the month. Pretty straightforward since we've been talking about it quite a bit. Your challenge is to just write opinions equal my own on all of your social media platforms. And to disclose your connection with ICC on those profiles where you are talking about ICC. And that is it. Thank you so much for joining our meeting today. I'm going to put the full the rules in the chat as soon as this meeting's over, and I will distribute this recording within the next couple of weeks. ICC Pioneers, we meet every other month, the first Monday of every other month. So I will see you in 2 months. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and keep sharing, keep posting, keep tagging ICC on social.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Bye.
Take care.
Many thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.